to beautiful ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. It's an honor to welcome you to this important conversation today, where we're discussing on building Africa's industrial backbone for economic sovereignty. Before we get into the conversation, I'd just like to give a big brief background for us to understand why this conversation is important today. Now, over in history, regions that have been able to grow economically have not only just focused on increasing their industrial base, but has taken industrialization very seriously. We have the example of the Asian tigers like most of us know, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and South Korea. And these countries moved from low-producing companies to low-producing countries to the world's powerhouses that we have today. And this didn't just happen by chance, it happened by being deliberate about industrial policies, being deliberate about building infrastructure and everything that we're going to be discussing today. And to be honest, Africa is at a very similar inflection point today. And that's why this conversation is super important, because you know that Africa has everything that it needs. We have the resources, we have the people, we have the entrepreneurs who are very resilient. And I know this because I am one of them. And this is something that we know that we can move from just being consuming countries to be production and manufacturing countries. So with me, I have some of the best minds in manufacturing across Africa, and we are going to be having, a conversation about this to see how Africa can go from just being a consuming continent to being a manufacturing continent. So thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this conversation. So before we start, I would like to have a question or throw a question to the panel and have everyone just give me what their thoughts are. So now we all know that Africa's ability to produce what it consumes and export competitively is sent us the economic sovereignty. So in just 1 minute, tell what do you believe is the most critical barrier holding back large-scale production and the most immediate levels on this? So I'll start with you, Yelena.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you first for inviting me here today. I'm Yelena, the CEO of Anfel Consulting and Lunay Energy. I would say that one of the main obstacles to local productions will be availability of reliable energy, which makes local production very uncompetitive from start. I come from Cameroon. We face that issue in Nigeria and in other countries. We have this energy transition issue. And I think one of the solutions to that will be the creation, which we see developing now, industrial zones, where developers are trying to put stable energy within the zones, which will create large-scale investment attractivity. That's what I can say.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Chike.
Okay, thank you. I'll just piggyback off what she said. It's all about infrastructure. But I'll talk through 3 things, right, quickly. Infrastructure, we can't say too much about it because when you look at the operational cost in terms of power, in terms of logistics, these things are very, very important to SMEs and businesses. And when there's the lack of it, it makes the cost of businesses very high. So that I wouldn't belabor that because everyone has talked about infrastructure. Let me talk about collaboration, right? One of the speakers talked about PAPS, which is a cross-border payment system which should allow the flow of goods and money across countries in Nigeria. This started a few years ago, and out of the 54 countries, in Africa, only 19 have signed up. And it begs the question because you see, I'm buying something from South Africa and I'm having to pay in US dollars. And you wonder when are we going to have that convergence, right? And then you also look, we can also look at it at the big picture and also come down to the micro level in terms of SMEs, where you have everybody wants to be a Dangote. Not everyone can be a Dangote. So when we talk about collaboration, when you hear in Nigeria and maybe Africa, you hear the word mergers and acquisitions, people will shy away from it. But I always ask SMEs and entrepreneurs, do you want to own 100% of the company that is worth $1 million? Or you want to own 20% of a company that is worth $3 billion? So when we start collaboration at the lower level, we are now able to break these barriers that we have. Then last of all would be branding. So I'll just tell a funny story, right? Don't ask me what I was doing there, right? I was in a village in Canada, right? And in that village, there are just about 33,000 people. There's no Uber there. When I got there, I was trying to check for Uber, there was no Uber. And while I was in the taxi, so the name of the taxi company is Capone, and the guy is having a field day making plenty money, right? And it's a very remote area in Canada. And on the radio, they were playing Davido's music. He takes me to my hotel, and in the hotel, in the library, there's a book by Pastor Adeboye in a village in Canada. And I'm thinking, how do we now start telling our stories, right? Because it is, for us to be able to compete internationally, people need to have the right story about us. I'll just tell you what some countries have been able to do. Take, for instance, Morocco. Morocco, last year, from tourism, they made about $11 billion from tourism. And they have just about 53 or so million people, or less than that. I think they are less than 40 million people. And from their airline, Emirates, they made about $1 billion. Now, if anybody has been to Marrakesh, I grew up in the north. Marrakesh is not different from Kano State in terms of the weather, in terms of the culture and everything. But because they are able to paint a picture, people go there every year and spend money. $11 billion. 11 billion. I want that amount to sink in. Lastly, you look at Egypt. Egypt moved away from Cairo, Alexandria, and they are building a tourism capital called Sharm el-Sheikh. Now, when you fly into Sharm el-Sheikh, if you see the airport in Sharm el-Sheikh, if you see the amount of people, but all this is to say that there's a story being told. We need to, before we say we want to start competing outside, let us look inwards and sort of promote what we are good at. And I think that's where I'll stop.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was super fast. So I pick out financial infrastructure, I pick out storytelling, branding, and how we position ourselves for the global market. That's fantastic. Thank you.
All right, my name is Lanre Ogundipe, once again. For me, I'll stick to tooling and the know-how of our industries. Manufacturing and production, it's an end-to-end process. One of the things that I've realized being in the manufacturing industry is that you have to be very good at every single process of your manufacturing chain and your production line as well. Now, if you think about that, the amount of money that we invest in having to train people on how to manufacture products, we literally had to fly people into the country to train them on how to use our products. How many industries are really investing in the technical know-how of their industries? What kind of investments are they putting into the education system to create a pipeline to create sustainable industries? They have said most of the other parts, so I don't want to speak on that. I want to speak more around and also our maintenance culture. We've seen many industries die in Nigeria and thrive in other places. Why? Because we don't have a culture. I was watching something some time ago where someone was saying, what's the direct African translation to maintenance, or Nigerian translation to maintenance? In all our languages, we don't have that, right? So it's something that we actually really need to think about. If we don't start to figure out how we create maintenance processes in our industries and also teach people how to tool at different stages of our manufacturing chains, I think we're setting ourselves up to fail. You can put all the kind of infrastructure that you want to put in place, but if people are not conditioned in their mind to actually take care of those different processes, and they come every day happy and knowing that they're doing all of this work to serve people, and there's an end line. If you look at mining, for example, the guy that goes to the ground to go and get the raw gold, right? He's very passionate about getting the raw gold and getting it to the next stage. But the companies who are doing this, how are they investing in those miners? So these are some things that we need to think about. And just because of time, I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, education. It is very straight for the education part of it, technical know-how, and I think that's super bad. So most times you see that there are gaps. It's not just that they don't know what to do, just don't know how to do it. And I think that's something that is really important. So Chike, I'm going to come back to you. And let's talk about finance. Considering that you'll be over, and of course you understand how important finance it is for industrialization. So access to long-term relation capital remains one of the biggest barriers in scaling manufacturing in Africa. So how is BOI evolving its financial models to support more high-risk, highly impact industrial ventures, especially those led by young farmers?
Okay. I was happy when we all talked about barriers, nobody talked about funding, right?
Because we're coming to you.
Yeah, because we are all in this room mainly sometimes because of funding, right? At the Bank of Industry, I would say that is our core focus. Over the last 6 to 7 years, we've raised about $7 billion, mainly from the syndication markets, and these are funds that we get on concessionary terms. What that means is they come most times in single-digit numbers, and that is why over a very long time we've been able to lend at single digits, right? So we lend at single digits and also up to the lower double digits, right? So what we've done over the years is, in terms of raising financing, we have become very innovative, right? So we started off going to the syndications market, and we had been very, very successful. Last year, we were able to raise close to about $2 billion, which is part of the $7 billion that I said we've raised over the last 6-7 years. What we've done is that over time, as we continue to interact with our financial partners, we see the need to become more creative, right? So being creative to be able to unlock more capital from new pools of funding, as well as cheaper rates for this funding. So what we did in the last 2 years is we've developed 2 frameworks. The first is the developmental impact framework, and the second is the sustainability finance framework. What that does for us is, over time, we've seen that a lot of our financial investors, the foreign financial institutions, always have specific metrics that they look at when they want to give us funding. And what 2 of them that they are big on are the developmental impact. So what we've done is, last year, we now have the Office of the Chief Impact Officer. So we have a dedicated team that measures impact. So when you come to us, there's a storytelling. We're telling you not just how many jobs that we've created, how many women did we give jobs, how many young people did we give jobs, what kind of jobs we're giving, right? We're looking at telling stories about around operational additionality, because sometimes we think, so just like Mr. Obechi said, sometimes it's not all about money. Sometimes it's about knowledge. It's about knowing what you can do to reduce your cost. And what we do in that aspect is we sort of partner with some of these financial institutions to also unlock funding for technical assistance. Now, these financings, they come sometimes in form of grants to educate businesses. I'll give you for an example. For instance, there's a company that we invested in, a cassava company, and we found out that through one of our funding partners, we found out that we could use the waste on the farm to power their boilers. So what we did is, through the fund manager, we now instituted a biogas solution that reduced the cost of power by almost 50%. Now, that unlocked more capital from her, but she didn't actually have to come to us to get money. We have also started looking at other types of capital. So when we sit in the room with bankers, everybody's just thinking about traditional debt funding, right? But in the bank of industry, we are evolving. And 2 years ago, we set up the corporate finance team. I head the equity capital markets desk. And part of what I do is we fund businesses using instruments like equity and quasi-equity. So what we've understood working with a lot of SMEs is that you may not need debt at this point in your growth. So we are now coming up with products that match what you need. We've also set up a non-interest banking desk. We have a gender desk. We've been able to deploy capital specifically to women-led businesses. We also invested in Arua Capital, Adiswa, who was here before now. Then we also look for other instruments that de-risk our portfolios. So we started working with the likes of Africa Guarantee Fund to help provide first loss guarantees for businesses. We also had a pivotal role in the setup of the Nigerian Credit Guarantee Company, which also does the same thing and provides credit guarantee for portfolios. So I would want to think that we are doing a lot in that space. And when you say in terms of going down deep into the riskier side of the business and youth, so some of our funding too is geared towards youth. One of the innovations that we are spearheading in Nigeria is called the iDice. That's the digital and creative enterprises. Investments in that space, and I think the total is close to about $600 and something million that is going to be deployed into that sector. And we know that sector is powered mainly by the young people, and we are also going to be pushing out funding through these various instruments, quasi-equity, grants, and then debt as well. So I think with us, over the years, as we move, as we interact with stakeholders, we are picking up what is going to happen in the future, and then we're now tweaking our financing and our structures to adapt to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chike. I mean, if you're in a room and you're a business, I think it's time to start taking the OIs up as quite serious, because this is amazing. The lineup of the offers that we have, I think, is easy to any business owners there. So I'll come back to you, Chike. But Yelena, I would like to learn. Now, let's talk about the energy, which is what you mentioned when you answered the first question. Now, energy remains the single largest cost route for habitat manufacturing. Anyone who is into manufacturing here knows that the most expensive line item on your books every morning is your energy cost. From your experience in energy and infrastructure consulting, what models, I mean, it could be renewable hybrid systems, local made grids, or industrial energy as a service, what models offer the most viable path to stable and affordable power for factories?
From my experience and what we currently face with some of the clients that I have in my portfolio is that we usually advise manufacturers to have a combination of the three, so which is the renewable grid, because in terms of cost, we cannot put all your eggs in one basket. So each of the models have its benefits. The renewable hybrid system, which is the solar, it gives the factories immediate cost relief, reliability without major grid reform. So, and it is tangible from installation. When we talk about the localized mini grid works, it works well in industrial parts. So we in our firm, we've personally been pushing clients to move to the industrial zone. Sometimes they feel it's more expensive, but when you look at the operating costs and the efficiency and the optimization, you actually see that in terms of costs, it's better. So it's something that we've been pushing. We recently have industrial zones that have been installed in Cameroon. So as part of our initiative is really to show the benefits of our clients to boost productivity in production while in installing industrial zones. Now, when we talk about energy as service, definitely it solved the financing bottlenecks by removing some of the initial capex. So what I can say is that the combination of the three is very important to create a stable and cost value effective production.
Easy. Thank you so much, Yelena. And so for business owners in the room, and that's also the essence of why we had today's conference, it's one thing to do business in isolation, but conferences like this help you sort of have a broader mindset to how you can address the challenges that you have. So like our past keynote speaker said, most times you can't just sit down and just complain about Papa. You adapt really quickly. Energy, power cost is a family that every manufacturer, every business owner goes to. And like Yelena has said, most times there is some utility in combining all different models to have a more sustainable situation. Well, thank you, Yelena, for sharing that. And so I'm going to come to Lanre. And I love the angle you went for the first question, when you talked about skill gaps and technical and knowledge and all of that. So let's go in that direction. One of the biggest constraints to industrial growth is the skill gap, like you said, especially in technical and digital occupations. Now, how can we redesign education and vocational systems to produce the kind of workforce that African manufacturers urgently need?
All right, thank you very much once again. So I think it's really about investing in digital literacy. If you look at Nigeria, for example, they did a research, the TRC and the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria did a training or did a research from teachers that are registered. Over 56%, and they used very, very low standards. Over 56% of our teachers are not digitally literate. If you don't have digitally literate teachers, you can't have digitally literate students. Now, another thing, the space that we're in hardware manufacturing. We assemble laptops, tablets, smartphones locally here in Nigeria. And 95% of our clientele have been education institutions. Now, government has mandated that from next year, we're going to start doing computer-based testing for WAEC. Now, in the north, the north is kicking against that because most schools in the north, students have never seen a computer before. Now, if we're talking about digital literacy and digitally literate economy, Lagos is the heart of it, Lagos and Abuja. There are so many states that you go into today that you will see graduates that have not used the computer before. I hire a lot of interns. I get interns that come into my office that have graduated. I will not name any school, but I've graduated from universities in Nigeria that type the body of an email on the subject. So there are many things that we need to think about. And sometimes, we all look onto government to do a lot of these things. SMEs are driving our economy today. what role is the industry playing in equipping and digitizing the students and the learners? A lot of companies have CSR budgets. We have a lot of oil companies here. They have CSR budgets, but the CSR budgets are majorly blanketed into trying to get tax breaks as opposed to actually creating deep impact. Now, how do we ensure that every industry or every industry owner is investing in the digitization of their process, and also ensuring that the pipeline of learners that are coming down below also have that same know-how? We want to start seeing industries adopting schools. We want to start seeing industries going to set up in universities. That is the way that we can bridge the industry. We keep talking about the gap between industry and academia. How do we bridge this gap? By ensuring that industry goes into the schools. Every state has a university or a college of education or something. There's so many ways that industries can support, but we leave it to government. Government has to take care of roads, has to take care of airports, has to take care of schools, has to take care of all of that. How much is government really making? Then government goes out to borrow money, everybody is shouting, our country, every time we're borrowing money. But what is the industry really doing? How are we even really paying our taxes? A lot of times we spend time, looking for ways to avoid paying tax and actually figuring out how to raise more money to pay our taxes. Don't worry about what the government does with the taxes. Do your part, right? And what I'm really, really particular about is ensuring that we get to a world where we see industries investing a lot of money in education and taking their know-how, their knowledge, their expertise, and also internships. We run an education system where people only intern in their third year, and not even all courses. There's no reason why every student should not intern from year 1 to year 4. That gives you a combined experience of at least 9 months to a year by the time you're going into work. We hire NYSC corpers. Majority of the NYSC corpers that we hire have zero work experience, have never worked in a corporate organization before. So now when you bring that person into your organization, you don't even have time to train them. Apart from maybe like banks and all those other guys that are setting up training in institutes and stuff like that. So I think that every industry should not just think about how they generate revenue, but how they create a sustainable life cycle for the pipelining of employees and talent as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That is very profound. And I think it's just something that we need to take seriously as a nation. You really want to, get to that kind of where they're very sustainable. So I'm going to come back to you, Chike. And still talking about finance, because that's your bread and water. So many SMEs struggle to transition from small-scale production to true industrial capacity. Now, what funding structures or blended finance strategies do you believe are most effective in helping Nigerian or African manufacturers scale sustainably?
Okay, I'll take this from two angles, because we keep on talking about funding.
I mean, it's important.
Yes, I know. But then we also find out that 40% of the problem is not funding, is actually information, right? So I think I've spoken a bit about in terms of the kind of instruments that we use. So in terms of blended finance, it is not just always debt, right? Are we going to give this company a grant? Is it what they need right now? Are we going to help them with like a credit guarantee that helps unlock more capital for them? Are we going to give them equity, which is much more patient capital? Because, so for us, the kind of capital we give is patient, is long-term, concessionary, 7 years, 5 to 7 years, single digits, lower double digits. But like I said, when you also look at the part that is not funding per se, right? And take for instance, because I like using numbers. Numbers makes it sink in. Take for instance, so somebody who is trying to scale. I had spoken before about measures acquisitions to sort of like scale up. When you look at information, right, what kind of industries are we going into, right? Sometimes it might just be where is our headspace at. I spoke about tourism. Morocco is making money because they are focused on that. Take, for instance, I love giving this example. We are the largest producers of cassava in Nigeria, in the world. In the world. We make about close to 60 to 62 million metric tons every year, right? If you compare with Thailand, Thailand does half of what we do, like about 30 million. Now, Thailand is able to process and export mainly to China, and they make an average of $1.5 billion every year. So, if we were just doing half, because they are doing 75% capacity, right? 75% of what they produce nationally. If we can do half, we are unlocking at least $2 billion in revenue. Now, I come from the east, and every 1 kilometer you drive, there's a cassava farm. So why would I now then be trying to go into solar when it's something to do in cassava? Maybe because somebody comes and says solar is the way to go. I understand, yes, that is where you want us to go to. But then there's cassava here that I can build upon and then now scale up. When you look at even energy in Africa, when I talk about telling our stories, and all this ties up into scaling up, right? Because we're talking about scaling up. When we sit down on tables with a lot of foreign financial institutions, their focus is clean energy, renewable energy, which is fantastic. I support it holistically, right? But we need to focus on what we have first, right? We have a large residue of gas reserves of gas in Africa. What are we doing with it? We've been talking about infrastructure, power. How are we then now helping that energy sector to build capacity in that space? So I think for us to be able to help businesses scale is identifying the right opportunities and doubling down on it. Lastly, I'll say, and maybe this is just also to just say that out there, we work closely with NCDMB, the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board. And recently, we just signed an MOU for an equity fund of about $100 million. And that is going to go strictly to Nigerian companies within the oil and gas ecosystem. And you can imagine what that amount of money can do. So if somebody was maybe just focusing on renewable energy or something outside there, may not have access to that money, or maybe he can. But what we're saying is that when we get the right financing structures, when we have the right ideas, when we look at which opportunities that are best for funding, then we can now scale to that point where we now start seeing big conglomerates. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chike. I think what I picked up from that was Africa is not really focusing on what we do or what we have. And it's almost like what Daddy said to the tune of the person who plays kickball. Yeah? But I think that's a conversation for another day. So, Yelena, let me come to you. Speaking about renewable energy now, as much as Chike has talked about it. As African industrializers, now how do we balance the push for rapid industrial growth with the need for sustainability and clean energy adoption, especially in countries that rely heavily on diesel or grid instability, like Nigeria? How do we balance this out?
I think in countries like ours, which is, I'll talk about my country and Nigeria, we don't really need to choose between the energies, industrial growth or sustainability. What we need to move into is cleaner energy, because when we're talking about finance, we see most of the time that financing, they're more interested in cleaner way of doing energy. So we have moves like getting rid gradually of diesel, which we cannot afford to leave also, and moving towards gas, renewable energy, where when it's planned properly, we can actually see cleaner energy, but then energy savings and cost as well. That's really what I can see on this one.
Thank you so much. And I think I like what you said, Chike, about biofuel. I think it's something that is really underused here, and it's something that we have in abundance. So it would be nice that as industries or enterprises are trying to go, that they're also considering the different ways that this can cut energy costs, for a more sustainable.
Yes, your time is up, unfortunately, but you can wrap up. Yes.
That's the big wrap up. So thank you, everyone. I think just to do a big wrap up. So, well, I didn't ask more questions because we don't have much time. But just to say that I think that, like I said earlier, that Apifa is at that inflection point, and these conversations are important for the book that we're looking to happen across the Apifa continent. And it cuts across every aspect. It cuts across finance, it cuts across logistics, it cuts across education, energy, everything. And we're hoping that these conversations keep happening to ensure that we get to where Africa is supposed to go. Africa has moved from just being a consuming continent to being a manufacturing continent that actually plays on a larger scale if it goes on the economy. So thank you, everyone. I think we'll then have questions and answers at the back, and we can keep up the communication from there. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for such beautiful conversation.
Yeah, that was a very powerful conversation. A big thank you to our panelists. If you can just step forward while we take a group picture.